My name is Pat Lloyd, and I was a second lieutenant and a first lieutenant, and the day I was scheduled to make captain, I got out. And the reason I got out was that my father was rifted in 1954, and I wasn't going to have the same thing happen to me. So rather than staying in the service, which I was very comfortable with having grown up in it, I got out. I grew up in the Army, so if you wanted to come back and have Thanksgiving and Christmas, you had to volunteer. I was in Delta Company, 2nd Battalion, 5th Cav, and I was a platoon leader and XO and CO. And to tell you stories, the stories are the men. Okay, it may be that some units were a little bit different than others in the sense that most of the men in my company there were a few volunteers, but the majority were draftees. And they were black, and they were white, and they were yellow, and they were green, and they were red. They were Christians, they were Jews, they were Muslims, they were agnostics. But the one thing that they did have was a sense of belonging and a sense of a shared experience. Now, what I mean by that, I had 3 radio operators. One of them had been a writer for Playboy in San Francisco. He had a little short pigtail. Another one of the RTOs was a little short Jewish bookkeeper from Brooklyn. And the third one was from southern Mississippi, and he was as black as Ace of Spades. And yet all 3 of them, where else would they have ever met each other except in the military? They wouldn't have, which sadly is one of the reasons we have neighborhoods and communities with gated, whatever you want to call it, to keep the riffraff out. And that's a personal aside, okay? I just could not believe how close the men in that company were. They shared socks, they shared food, they shared everything. And yet you come back to the States and the sharing is gone. And I really don't know why. My father retired as a sergeant major, and his one piece of advice when I got ready to go to Vietnam was, you need to always remember that those sergeants can do without you, but you can't do without them. Best piece of advice I ever got. But the stories that I'm talking about in a very general sense is not about me and anything I experienced, except for the fact that I watched the men. And I just was absolutely amazed at the way they reacted to each other. Some of the things were kind of foolish. Some of them were deadly foolish. But that's about it. I suffer from PTSD, and I think about 8 of the items that Agent Orange was kind enough to bestow on us. So my work with the PTSD is that my psychiatrist told me that if I would find something to do for somebody else, I wouldn't have time to worry about my own condition. And so I work with a group that tries to help senior veterans, or as I like to fondly recall them, as the forgotten veterans of World War II and Korea and Vietnam, in other words, pre-9/11. And I think the young veterans deserve everything they get, but I don't think that should mean we should forget the ones who came before them.